like I said, unfortunate, because we know that when we look back just for a second at that last game that they played, like I said, a week and a half ago, I mean, other than a hobbling Jalen Johnson being in position to take that final shot, but not quite at 100%. So the Hawks then lose that game by just a point. You kind of look there, and that was also a game where Kristaps Porzingis did not play, but to your earlier point, the Hawks just got more out of their front court for that game, because that was a game where Onyeka Okongwu scored 20. And even though Jalen Johnson was a little bit hobbled later on in that game, he scores 29. So you have that going for the Hawks front court in the game almost 2 weeks ago. Tonight, Onyeka just 14 points, Jalen just 19 points. And granted, you got a little bit more out of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But again, if where this team was kind of finding itself just as far as the front court is concerned, and kind of making sure that the Hawks were able to keep up with the Pistons front court, especially, as you mentioned, with being out hustled and out muscled, that's where you sort of saw that separation. And that's why, instead of talking about maybe a 1 point differential, albeit wanting that to be in the Hawks' favor this go round, that's why we're talking about nearly a 30-point loss for this team tonight, because they just really, Detroit just established itself inside early. And that's really where the game was kind of won and lost. Although there's another point, of course, we'll talk about that in our turning point, where the game was lost as well. But for me, I think one of the things that was a little bit of a challenge, and hey, it's always going to be one of those things that's pesky, and probably if you're losing this battle, you're going to lose the game. And with the Hawks, that's turnovers. Again, if you look back at that game just a couple of weeks ago, 13 turnovers. That's why you almost walked away with a win for the team that has the best now record in the Eastern Conference. Conversely, you had 13 turnovers almost by halftime of this game. And particularly, if you go back and look in that second quarter, that's where the Hawks actually turned the ball over 7 times. And that's just something you can't do. And of course, they end up with 20 turnovers for the entire game. But against a team like the Pistons, you can't really afford to be in a situation where you give them extra opportunities to score. And that's exactly what the Hawks did. And even, DeShaun, if you go back to that first quarter, the Hawks had 5 turnovers in the first quarter, in a quarter where they also shot 5 of 8 from 3. So they were right with the Pistons in terms of being able to get their shot off from the perimeter. But it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
The ball over 5 times, and the Pistons are actually turning that into points. And then that very next quarter, although the numbers don't necessarily say it, because the Pistons scored 35 to the Hawks 27 in the second quarter, and they scored far fewer points against the Pistons in the third quarter, you started to kind of see the unraveling in the second quarter. And a lot of the unraveling that you saw started because of the turnovers.
I think that you did. And a big part of that, I think, is because of what I figured coming into the game was going to have to be a huge point of emphasis, was that the Hawks were going to have to contest and contend. They were going to have to match the energy level, match the physicality, the intensity that Detroit plays with, whether they're at home or on the road, but especially at home. The kind of, I guess, culture that they play with to a degree. I mean, the way that they embrace and kind of embody that culture that they have, and the energy, the defense that they come with. And I thought that the Atlanta Hawks really needed to convert from the free throw line, which they didn't do an exceptionally poor job at doing. But because of the fact that the the Detroit Pistons commit the most fouls of anybody in the NBA, 84% from the free throw line, you can't ask for too much more than that from the Atlanta Hawks. I just really don't think that it helped down the stretch, especially in the second half, when Nickeil Alexander-Walker going scoreless. I think in the second half, he might have had 2 points, maybe. But outside of that, then he just really needed to send 5 to the glass at all times, because of the ability that the Pistons have in terms of rebounding. And they did the best job that you possibly could with not just being short a guy, but also not extremely deep in the front court to begin with.
Yeah.
Asa Newell's still a young guy. We already talked about Kristaps Porzingis not playing. Onyeka
Mhm.
Okongwu, he's only one guy for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Zachary Risachet looks really light in the rear end against some of those guys from the Pistons, Isaiah Stewart and Duran and some of those guys. So you can only ask so much realistically. I think they held their own in that department.
And you're right about Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Oh, no points in the third quarter in that all-telling third quarter, but also just 2 points in the fourth quarter. But real quick, I think that other piece there as well, when we see the Hawks playing at their best, is when we're able to look down that box score and see more than just the front court contributing
Mhm.
in terms of offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds. Because when it comes to the offensive side of the board, like you said, you need all five crashing to give yourself second chance opportunities. And you need all five crashing at the other end as well,
That's right.
so that the other team, your opponent, doesn't get those second chance points. And when I look at that box score, I got to say I am disappointed because other than Jalen Johnson, who had his typical triple double, although it was a lighter triple double with just the
Mhm.
19 points versus 29 the last time, 11 rebounds and 12 assists. What troubles me, other than Dyson Daniels, give him credit for him getting 10 rebounds, but nobody else was even close. Onyeka Okongwu getting 3 rebounds in the game, not acceptable. Zachary
Not.
Risachet, the same. 3 boards, that's not going to cut it. And Asa Newell, in 17 minutes, if you can't score, because, and he did have 10 points, but honestly, 10 points, especially going up against a Detroit Pistons bench that scored 70 points overall,
Yeah.
at a minimum, you've got to get in there and crash the boards and help on the defensive side of the ball because, yeah, like you said, without a Kristaps Porzingis in there, you can't get it done. One man cannot get it done, or in this case, two men between Double O and Jalen Johnson couldn't get it done. And we saw that in the third quarter, which is where this game took a turn, and we'll talk about that up next. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by ZocDoc. Guys, it's 2025, almost 2026, and those days of waiting for something to become a full-blown emergency before you see a doctor, well, they're over. No more walking it off for 6 months. No more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously, and ZocDoc makes that even easier. So staying healthy is more than just hitting the gym. It's more than eating right. It's absolutely about getting things checked out when something feels off. Using ZocDoc makes scheduling easier. Search for in-network doctors and book right in the app. Real appointment times are listed, including same-day visits, no more back and forth phone calls or waiting weeks to be seen. And it's super helpful for routine checkups and those little issues you've been meaning to get checked out. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. This episode of our postcast is also brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. And this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of running a business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. If you're ready to make your workday smoother and keep customers connected without the headaches, Quo makes upgrading your setup easier than ever. A streamlined system makes such a big difference when communicating with customers. Having calls, texts, and voicemails in one clean view keeps everything organized and helps you stay responsive. And being able to share one team number makes it so much easier to make sure nothing gets missed. So make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Well, we appreciate you guys, as always, for making the Hawks Postcast your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network as well. Now, DeShaun, this game, despite the turnovers, but despite not crashing the boards and maybe having a little bit of a shaky first half at the free throw line, this game was still in reach for the Hawks. The Hawks were only down by 9 at halftime, but those meltdowns at both ends, especially in the third quarter, was the turning point that sealed this game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
So, DeShaun, if we juxtapose the Detroit Pistons third quarter and the Hawks third quarter, the Atlanta Hawks third quarter was kind of like night and day to what we saw from the Pistons. Everything from, and like we said, whole 94 feet here. So if we go into the field goal attempts, the Hawks only made 27% of their shots from the field. Meanwhile, the Pistons still on fire. Third quarter, 58% from the field, 38% from three. The Hawks did not make 1 3 in the third quarter. And that quarter, I know you mentioned 84% is where they ended the night from the free throw line, but just 70% from the free throw line in that third quarter. Had 10 opportunities to get it done. As you mentioned, the Pistons, one of the teams that fouls the most in the league. That would have been a great opportunity to take advantage of that. Meanwhile, Pistons shot 80% from the field and eventually outscored the Hawks 35-19 in the period. And really, that was your turning point.
Clearly, the total opposite of a recipe for success is a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what shocking the third quarter was for the Atlanta Hawks, being outscored 35-19. And I think some of it is just as simple as that. Just the Detroit Pistons, who's known for its defense, not just scoring that many points in the quarter per se, but scoring 142 in the game. I mean, there was an instance where they opened up the third quarter and the Detroit Pistons went on a 10-2 run to open up the second half. That was in the span of 2 minutes in the third, and then followed that up by another span of just 2 minutes in the third quarter between the 8:11 and 6:03 mark, where the Pistons went on a 9-0 run in the third. That was essentially what sealed the deal for the Detroit Pistons and the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, listen, in that little span of 2 minutes, the latter one that I mentioned, Dyson Daniels with a turnover, Jalen Johnson with a turnover, 2 Pistons blocks, by the way. And then 2 3-point conversions by the Pistons. And we're talking about already being up on the Pistons by 9, entering the second half. And just from that point, the momentum starts already gaining, not swinging, but just starting to build, if you will, starting to accumulate on top of all things. And believe it or not, I know we're talking about the third quarter, but midway through the fourth quarter, Detroit Pistons was averaging 58% from the field, which is the most by any opposing team versus the Hawks this season. It just seems like when it was raining, it was pouring.
Yeah, indeed. And all was okay on the offensive board. That is, and switching gears to defense, as you mentioned earlier, offensive rebounds actually not too bad for the Hawks. Even in that period, they out-rebounded the Pistons 4-2, but it was the defensive rebounds where they got out-rebounded 11-7, and that's where you started to see the Pistons kind of separate themselves, because that means, hey, we're limiting your second chance opportunities. And then Robert, who joins us all the time, appreciate you for being our everydayer, he made a great point about the fact that there was limited ball movement. So in that same quarter, the Pistons, 9 assists. The Hawks, just 3 dimes. That's not going to cut it, because that means that ball is not moving side to side. It's not moving left to right. That means that offense is stagnant. And you mentioned it earlier, if the Hawks are not playing that fast-paced ball, if they're not moving in transition, then that means you're probably moving in the half court. That gives the Pistons defense an incredible opportunity to get their defense reset, to make sure that you're not able to score or set up the kind of run and gun style of offense that you're accustomed to be able to do the things that you do. So it was like kind of plodding along in that period for the Hawks.
And we don't even really have to belabor or go into this too deeply or too far, but the reality is this, Tenitra, the more and more we're starting to see the Hawks, kind of goes back to what we were saying just a couple of weeks ago. the more and more you're starting to see how much number 11 is truly missed. On the defensive end, maybe not. On this or on that or so and so, maybe not. But when it comes to getting guys set up and making things easier where you don't, have to overwork some of
Yeah.
your players on the offensive side of the ball, making it easier for everybody, being that traffic director or that instructor, letting everybody know on this side when to stop, letting everybody know on this side that it's okay to come on or whatever, what have you. That really is your catalyst for this team. Because they don't have him, I think it's just slowly more and more starting to show the impact of Trae Young's absence.
Yeah. And when you think about the fact that, hey, he's on his way back, and this is a good thing. So trending in the right direction. Hopefully you'll have a chance to see him soon. I know that we saw shades of what Kristaps Porzingis was able to do in the couple games that he was able to play before the cup break, if you will. And of course, not able to go tonight due to illness. But yeah, those are big keys that you're missing in the front court. When Kristaps Porzingis isn't out there, you're missing a guy who can at least bang a little bit more, has the height to at least give you a somewhat of a competitive advantage against the Pistons. But again, he didn't play against against the Pistons the last go round, and the Hawks were right there. But then you think about what, as you mentioned, what ball movement, what a fluid offense looks like. And yes, the Hawks have done well in the absence of Trae Young as far as keeping their heads above water and being able to do the kinds of things that we've seen them do when they're able to get quality wins. So we know that they're capable of winning without Trae, but I don't think I don't think it's sustainable to try to win
Extensive time.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a quick question for you, Tenitra, and we definitely don't have to deep dive into this right now, but it's just something that I had been hearing over the course of the last couple of days. Just wanted a quick opinion from you on it. There had been some talks, rumors that were surfacing and so forth, about what exactly Dallas is planning to do with Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Just your quick opinion. I don't know. I feel like you got your own version of Anthony Davis and Kristaps Porzingis right now, in my opinion.
Hello,
but I'm just
DeShaun?
I saw it, but I just had to get Tanitra's opinion on it because before it actually becomes something or it becomes nothing at all.
Yeah, like I love Anthony Davis's game, right? I've been watching him since he was a member of my hometown team, the New Orleans Pelicans. Anthony Davis is an absolute beast. When you talk about the Lakers being able to win in the bubble, it goes without saying that, of course, it was LeBron James, but you know how AD played. Sure. When AD is healthy, AD is an absolute beast. But can we go back to something you said just 45 seconds ago, which is when healthy?
Yeah.
We say the same thing about Kristaps Porzingis. When the Boston Celtics got Kristaps Porzingis, I texted you and I was devastated because I so wanted him to come here because I said, that's probably the money shot. The Celtics are going to get over the hump and win the championship because he just brings something very versatile and very different to the front court. I still believe that in him, but I also said to you earlier this year when the Hawks got Kristaps Porzingis, somebody better bubble wrap Kristaps and Jalen.
You did.
Somebody better, yeah. And here we are. So I feel like Anthony Davis is the same. Is somebody going to bubble wrap him?
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to bubble wrap him, help me to understand how you think that he's actually going to play a healthy number of games. I am looking at the games he's played so far, right? He played 5 in October.
Yeah.
1 in November and 4 in December. So if my math is mathing, that is 10 games.
That's right.
If I look at Dallas's schedule, Dallas has played 25.
Wow. I had to get Tanitra's opinion on it. I know we were talking about the front court and so forth, and the numbers is kind of starting to move anyway. So I couldn't let the rumors and all that kind of stuff be swirling around and not bring it up just one time. But feel free for anybody that wants to go ahead and tweet at us or whatever, what have you, to kind of keep that conversation going. If it's something that you would like to entertain, I would be more than happy to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we have that quickly approaching December 15th sort of phantom deadline in the NBA where some of these contracts allow for these players to be moved. So you're going to hear this commentary and this conversation at least ratchet up for the next several days. And if it's being talked about, we're going to talk about it too. The Hawks Postcast is the #1 place to hang out after every game and is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, head over to Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.